Welcome to this deep dive. We're going microscopic today
Oh, wow.
to explore something that affects every single one of us, viruses.
Yes.
Using this introduction to viruses source material that you gave me,
Right.
we're going to unravel their secrets from how they actually work to how they spread
Yeah.
and why there's so much more than just the things that give us the sniffles.
I love it.
I think we're going to learn some really surprising stuff today.
Definitely.
Like how they hijack our cells
Uh-huh.
and maybe even tackle the question, are they even really alive?
Big questions.
So I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Okay, great.
But let's start with the basics.
Right.
What exactly is a virus?
Well, at their core, viruses are these incredibly tiny infectious agents.
Okay,
So much smaller than bacteria.
got it.
And here's the key. They can't replicate on their own.
Oh, interesting.
They need a living host, like a plant or an animal or even another bacterium, to actually do that.
Interesting.
Think of them as ultimate parasites.
Like little hijackers. Exactly.
Okay, so they're hijacking cells, but how do they do that? What are they made of?
Imagine this tiny package of genetic material.
Okay.
It could be either DNA or RNA,
Uh-huh.
and it's surrounded by a protein coat.
Okay.
And that coat is called a capsid,
The capsid.
and it acts like a suit of armor protecting the virus's precious genetic cargo.
Oh, so it's both a protection and a way to sneak into the cells.
Exactly. Not only does it protect the viral genome,
Right.
but it also has special proteins that help the virus attach to and enter host cells.
Geeky.
Very sneaky.
They like it.
And some viruses even have this extra layer called an envelope.
Oh, wow.
And this is covered in spikes
Oh,
that help them latch onto those cells even more effectively.
wow. That's pretty clever. And I'm guessing viruses don't all look the same, right?
No, you're right.
Okay.
Viruses come in a variety of shapes, from simple helixes,
Okay.
which kind of look like a spiral staircase, to more complex structures,
Oh, interesting.
like icosahedrons, which resemble a 20-sided dice.
Some are even prolate.
Prolate, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stretched out sphere.
Okay.
Imagine a football.
Oh,
That's a good visual for a prolate virus.
okay. Yeah, I'm picturing it. It's amazing how much diversity
I know, right?
exists in such a tiny world.
Yeah.
So how do these little shapeshifters make copies of themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not even technically alive, right?
Well, that's the debate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are they alive or not?
Big questions.
We might touch on that later, but to your question,
Yeah.
there are two main ways that viruses replicate.
Okay.
The lysolytic cycle
Got it.
and the lysogenic cycle.
Ooh, those sound intriguing.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Starting with the lysolytic cycle, what happens there?
Picture this. A virus, like a tiny space invader,
Right.
encounters a host cell.
Uh-huh.
It attaches to the cell's surface, kind of like docking a spaceship.
I like that visual.
And injects its genetic material inside.
So it's using the cell's own machinery to build more viruses.
It's like some microscopic factory.
Precisely.
Wow.
The viral genetic material takes over the cell's command center, forcing it to produce all these components
Huh?
needed to make new viruses.
Wow.
It's like a hostile takeover at the cellular level.
That's intense.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Well, once the cell has produced all these new viral components,
Yeah.
they assemble into new viruses ready to infect other cells.
Oh, no.
The host cell, completely exhausted, bursts open, releasing a flood of these newly formed viruses.
Talk about a dramatic exit.
I know, right?
So that's the lytic cycle. What about the lysogenic cycle?
Okay.
Is it similar?
Not quite. It's more of a stealth operation.
Okay.
Instead of immediately taking over and destroying the cell,
Uh-huh.
the virus integrates its genetic material into the host cell's DNA.
Oh, so it's hiding out like a sleeper agent.
Exactly. The viral DNA becomes part of the host's genome,
Oh, wow.
and it replicates along with the host's DNA.
Wow.
And it can remain dormant for extended periods, sometimes even years.
But then something triggers it.
Oh, okay.
Maybe stress or a weakened immune system, and bam,
Oh, no.
the virus activates,
Oh.
switches to the lytic cycle,
Oh.
and starts churning out new viruses.
That's incredibly sneaky.
I know, it's like a virus playing the long game.
It really is.
Yeah, a perfect example of this is the herpes virus.
Okay.
It can lie dormant in your nerve cells for years,
Right.
and then suddenly reappear as a cold sore when you're feeling stressed or your immune system's low.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these microscopic invaders replicating, spreading.
Uh-huh.
But how do they actually cause the illnesses we experience? I mean, there's a huge variety of viral infections out there, right?
Absolutely. There are countless viruses.
Wow.
each with its own way of interacting with our bodies.
Okay.
Take the common cold, for instance,
Right.
is caused by rhinoviruses.
Uh-huh.
And while they're annoying, they usually don't cause serious illness.
Thank goodness for that. But what about more serious viruses?
Right.
Like, say, HIV. What makes them so different?
HIV, or the human immunodeficiency virus, belongs to this special group called retroviruses.
Okay.
They're RNA viruses,
Uh-huh.
but they have this unique ability to turn their RNA into DNA.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that the opposite of how things usually work?
It is.
Okay.
They use this enzyme called reverse transcriptase to essentially reverse the script.
Okay.
And this newly made DNA then integrates into the host cell's genome.
So it's like a permanent resident now.
Pretty much, yeah.
So what happens next?
This integrated viral DNA, which we call a provirus,
Okay.
it can remain inactive for a while,
Uh-huh.
but eventually it activates and starts producing new viruses.
And that's when things get dangerous.
Right. Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
HIV specifically attacks the immune system, those cells that normally protect us from infections.
Right.
And as HIV replicates,
Yeah.
it weakens the immune system,
Yeah.
making the body susceptible to a whole range of other infections that
Oh.
wouldn't normally cause serious problems.
So it's not HIV itself that's always deadly,
Right.
but the other infections that take advantage of a weakened immune system.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
When the immune system is severely weakened,
Yeah.
it leads to AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome,
Right.
which is the most advanced stage of HIV infection.
This is all pretty heavy stuff, but I'm curious about the transmission of these viruses.
Okay.
Is HIV as contagious as, say, the common cold?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
Importantly, HIV is transmitted through bodily fluids,
Okay.
like blood or during sexual contact,
Mhm.
not through casual contact like shaking hands or sharing a meal.
Right.
It's a very different mode of transmission
Yeah.
compared to, say, the respiratory droplets
Right.
that spread colds and flus.
So that's a vital distinction.
Yeah.
Understanding how these different viruses spread is key to protecting ourselves.
Absolutely.
Speaking of protection, are there ways to prevent or treat viral infections?
Absolutely. While there isn't a cure for HIV yet,
Okay.
there are incredibly effective treatments that can manage the virus
That's good.
and help people live long, healthy lives.
That's great.
Prevention is also vital,
Right.
with safe sex practices, needle hygiene, and regular testing being crucial.
Incredibly important points. What about other viruses? Are there ways to fight them off?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
We have antiviral medications, which are like tiny wrenches thrown into the virus's machinery.
Okay.
They interfere with specific steps in the viral replication process,
Got it.
preventing the virus from spreading.
So each antiviral is designed to target a specific virus.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why it's so important to see a doctor
Yeah.
to get an accurate diagnosis and the right antiviral medication if needed.
Makes sense. And of course, we have vaccines, right?
Yes.
It's like giving our immune system a sneak peek of the virus.
Right.
So it can be prepared to fight it off.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Vaccines are incredibly effective at preventing viral infections.
Right.
They're a powerful tool in our fight against viruses.
So we've covered a lot of ground, their
Mhm.
structure, how they replicate, different types of infections they cause.
Right.
But there's this big question that kind of lingers in my mind.
Okay.
Are viruses truly alive?
The million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It's a topic of debate, even among scientists.
Wow.
Viruses exhibit some characteristics of life,
Uh-huh.
like the ability to evolve and adapt,
Right.
but they lack others,
Okay.
like the ability to maintain homeostasis or reproduce independently.
So they're in this gray area, challenging our very understanding of life itself.
Exactly.
That's wild.
I know, right?
Okay, so I think this is a great place to take a break.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. We'll delve into how viruses were first discovered,
Yes.
talk about how they spread so effectively,
Right.
and maybe even explore whether there are any potential benefits to these tiny but mighty entities.
Sounds good.
So stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of viruses. You know, before we jump into the next part, it just hit me how strange it is
Yeah.
that something so tiny that we can't even see can have such a massive impact on our lives.
It really is mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is.
You're talking about things that are hundreds of times smaller than a human cell,
Right.
yet they can bring entire societies to a standstill.
Exactly. Speaking of which, how did scientists even figure out that viruses existed in the first place?
Well, it's a story that goes back to the late 1800s,
Okay.
long before we had the powerful microscopes we use today.
Wow.
It all started with a scientist named Dmitry Ivanovsky,
Okay.
who was studying a disease that was destroying tobacco plants.
Tobacco mosaic disease.
That's the one.
Okay.
Ivanovsky was trying to isolate the bacteria causing this disease,
Uh-huh.
but he kept hitting a wall.
So it wasn't bacteria.
Exactly. He discovered that whatever was causing the disease could pass through filters that trapped bacteria,
Oh, interesting.
suggesting it was something much, much smaller.
Wow. So they knew there was something there but couldn't actually see it.
Right. At the time, Ivanovsky called it a filterable virus,
Okay.
acknowledging that it was something new and unknown.
Wow.
It was like finding a mysterious footprint, but not knowing what creature made it.
That's a great way to put it. It's amazing how scientists
Well, yeah.
make these groundbreaking discoveries, even with limited technology.
Yeah.
So when did they actually start calling them viruses?
Well, a few years later, another scientist named Martinez Beijerinck
Okay.
independently conducted similar experiments
Uh-huh.
and came to the same conclusion.
Okay.
He was the one who coined the term virus,
Hmm.
which is Latin for poison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense given how many viruses cause diseases.
Right.
But we now know that's not the whole story, right?
Absolutely. Viruses are incredibly diverse,
Right.
and their impact goes far beyond just causing illness.
Right.
But the early work of scientists like Ivanovsky and Beijerinck
Yeah.
really laid the foundation for the field of virology,
Wow.
and we've been uncovering their secrets ever since.
And what a journey it's been. Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
I'm curious about how these tiny entities actually spread.
Okay.
I mean, they're masters of transmission, aren't they?
They truly are.
Yeah.
Viruses have evolved a whole range of strategies
Okay.
to move from one host to another.
Okay.
Some, like those causing the flu or the common cold,
Right.
spread through tiny droplets released when an infected person coughs or sneezes.
That's why we're always told to cover our mouths and noses when we cough or sneeze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These droplets can hang in the air for a while or land on surfaces
Uh-huh.
where they could be picked up by others.
Oh, yikes.
Other viruses, like norovirus,
Okay.
which causes stomach flu,
Right.
spread through contaminated food or water.
So proper hygiene and food safety are really important.
Very important, yeah.
I'm starting to see why these tiny things can cause such widespread outbreaks.
Uh-huh.
Then you have viruses like HIV or hepatitis B and C,
Right.
which are spread through bodily fluids like blood.
Yeah.
That's why safe sex practices and needle hygiene are so crucial.
Absolutely.
It seems like understanding how a virus spreads is the first step in
Yeah.
figuring out how to prevent it, right?
Absolutely. Knowing the enemy, so to speak, is key to winning the battle.
Makes sense. But what about vectors?
Okay?
I remember hearing that term a lot during the Zika virus outbreak a few years ago.
Yeah.
What are those exactly?
Yes, vectors.
Yeah.
They're living organisms that can transmit viruses from one host to another.
Okay.
Mosquitoes are a classic example.
So the mosquito itself doesn't cause the illness, but it carries the virus that does.
Precisely.
Okay.
Let's say a mosquito bites someone infected with a virus like Zika. The virus enters the mosquito, replicates inside it,
Wow.
and then when that mosquito bites another person, it transmits the virus to them.
Wow. So viruses are hitching rides on other creatures to spread.
Yeah.
It's quite brilliant in a way.
It is. And this incredible adaptability is a big reason
Yeah.
why emerging viral threats are such a concern for public health officials.
Okay. Emerging viral threats sounds a bit scary.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
Essentially, these are viruses that are either newly identified
Okay.
or known viruses that are spreading more rapidly
Okay.
or in new geographical areas.
Like COVID-19, for example.
Exactly.
Right.
The virus that causes COVID-19 was a novel coronavirus, meaning we had never seen it before.
Right.
Our immune systems were completely unprepared,
Yeah.
and the virus spread rapidly around the globe.
I remember those early days. It was
Yeah.
a really uncertain time.
It was.
It makes me wonder what else contributes to these viral threats emerging.
There are several factors.
Okay.
Climate change, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
can play a role.
Really? How so?
Well, as temperatures rise,
Yeah.
the habitats of vectors like mosquitoes can expand.
Okay.
Mosquitoes that carry diseases like dengue fever or Zika can now thrive in areas where they previously couldn't survive.
Oh, wow.
potentially exposing new populations to these viruses.
Wow, so something as big as climate change
I
can
mean,
have this ripple effect down to something as small as a virus.
exactly. It's all interconnected.
Yeah,
Deforestation and habitat loss also increase the chances of contact between humans and wildlife,
right.
which can lead to the spillover of viruses from animals to humans.
So our impact on the environment has a direct impact
Yes.
on the emergence of new diseases.
Precisely.
Wow.
And then you have globalization and increased travel,
Uh-huh.
which can quickly spread a virus across the globe in a matter of days or even hours.
So it's almost like a constant race, isn't it?
I know.
Scientists and public health officials trying to stay one step ahead of these emerging threats.
You could say that. It's why research into new antiviral treatments and vaccines is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It sounds like international cooperation is key too, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sharing information, coordinating surveillance efforts,
Right.
and working together to develop and distribute treatments and vaccines
Right.
are all crucial for protecting global health.
It's fascinating how something so tiny can have such a big impact on our world.
I know.
It makes you realize how interconnected we all are, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of understanding viruses,
Yeah.
not just as agents of disease,
Right.
but as fascinating entities that play a complex role in our ecosystem.
This deep dive has been incredibly enlightening.
Oh, good.
But before we wrap up this part, I have to ask,
Okay.
with all the challenges viruses pose,
Yeah.
are there any potential benefits?
Okay.
Could they ever be used for good?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us perfectly into the final part of our viral exploration.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of viruses.
Yes.
So far, we've explored their structure, how they replicate, and even how they spread. We've talked about the diseases they cause and the challenges they pose to global health.
Uh-huh.
But before we wrap up, I'm really curious about something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The potential for viruses to be used for good.
Right.
Is that really a thing?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
considering how much effort we put into fighting them off.
Exactly.
But yes, viruses have a surprising potential for good,
Okay.
especially in medicine.
That's wild. I mean, we think of viruses as these tiny invaders
Right.
that cause so much trouble,
Yeah.
but they could actually help us heal.
It's all about harnessing their unique abilities.
Okay.
You see, viruses are experts at getting inside cells
Uh-huh.
and delivering genetic material.
Right?
What if we could engineer them to carry beneficial genes
Okay.
instead of harmful ones?
Okay, now you've got my attention. What would that look like?
Well, imagine using viruses as tiny delivery vehicles
Okay.
to carry healthy genes into cells to replace faulty ones.
So it's like using viruses to fix broken genes. Wow.
Think of it as a microscopic repair crew,
Okay.
targeting specific cells and delivering the genetic instructions they need to function properly.
That's incredible. It sounds like science fiction.
I know.
But is this actually happening?
Yes.
Are there any gene therapies already being used?
Absolutely. In fact, several gene therapies have already been approved for use.
Wow.
For example, there are gene therapies for treating spinal muscular atrophy,
Okay.
a devastating genetic disease that affects muscle development,
Right.
and a rare form of inherited blindness.
Wow. So this isn't just a futuristic concept. It's already making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is.
Are there any other ways viruses could be helpful?
There are. Another promising area is using viruses to fight bacterial infections.
Oh, really?
With the growing threat of antibiotic-resistant bacteria,
Yeah.
we're in desperate need of new weapons in our arsenal.
You're talking about superbugs.
Yes,
Those bacteria that have become resistant to even our strongest antibiotics.
that's right.
Yeah, that's scary stuff.
It is. It's a serious public health crisis.
Yeah.
But here's where viruses come in.
Okay.
Did you know there are viruses that specifically infect and kill bacteria?
I had no idea. So it's like fighting fire with fire.
Exactly.
Viruses attacking bacteria.
These bacteria-killing viruses are called bacteriophages, or phages for short.
Okay.
They've been used to treat bacterial infections for decades,
Wow.
particularly in Eastern Europe.
Oh, interesting.
Now, with the urgency of the antibiotic resistance crisis,
Right.
there's a resurgence of interest in phage therapy
Makes sense.
in other parts of the world.
It's amazing how something we've known about for so long
I know, right?
could hold the key to solving this modern-day medical challenge.
It's pretty amazing.
It makes you wonder what other potential viruses hold.
You're right. And speaking of surprises,
Okay.
Scientists are even exploring the potential of viruses in cancer treatment.
Wait, viruses to fight cancer? That seems counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Aren't viruses usually the bad guys in this scenario?
Well, there are certain types of viruses
Okay,
called oncolytic viruses
got it.
that have this natural ability to infect and destroy cancer cells.
So they're like guided missiles
Yeah,
targeting the cancer cells while leaving healthy cells alone?
that's a great way to put it. It's called oncolytic virotherapy.
Okay.
And while it's still in the early stages of development,
Mm-hmm.
it shows real promise for treating various types of cancer.
This is mind-blowing. It really challenges our assumptions about viruses.
It does.
I mean, we spent so much time fearing them,
Yeah.
but they could actually be powerful allies in the fight against disease.
It's a perfect example of how scientific understanding can change our perspective.
Totally.
As we learn more about viruses,
Yeah.
we're discovering incredible complexities and unlocking their potential in ways we never imagined.
I feel like this whole deep dive has been a whirlwind. We've
Yeah.
gone from the microscopic structure of viruses all the way to their potential for revolutionizing medicine.
It's a pretty amazing world.
It is. It's amazing what we can learn from just one source, like introduction to viruses.
I know, it's really fascinating.
It is.
And it underscores a crucial point.
Mm,
Knowledge is power.
yes.
The more we understand viruses,
Uh-huh.
the better equipped we are to address the challenges they pose
Right.
and harness their potential for good.
So true. I started this deep dive a little apprehensive about the topic, but I'm leaving with a sense of awe and a newfound appreciation for these tiny but mighty entities.
That's great.
Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey.
It's been my pleasure. And remember,
Yeah.
the world of viruses is vast,
Yeah.
and ever evolving.
Right.
There's always more to discover, and who knows what incredible breakthroughs lie ahead.
That's a great note to end on.
I think so, yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of viruses.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious.